Hello everyone, this is going to be the last video for CS220 course this semester. In this video, I'll be going through the topics of bugs in seeding and statistical significance. I'll not have time to go through the topics of histograms and normal function in numpy.random module. Please feel free to go through the slides about the last two topics on your own. Please know that you'll not be tested on the last two topics for the purpose of final exam. Let's talk about bugs and randomization. I have a choice function call over here where I'm saying choose randomly from values from 0 through 9 by passing 10 as the first argument and give me 5 such values by passing 5 as the argument to the size parameter, and I'm converting the return value to a series. The values of my series are going to be the randomly generated values. The index of my series values are always going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, correct? I can very easily produce a line plot of this series by simply saying s.plot.line. That will work because my series is ordered based on index values here. You need to always make sure that your series is sorted based on index values to be able to get a proper line. If you don't have your index values sorted, then you're going to get a crooked line. What if I'm interested in plotting the percentage difference between each random choice over here? For example, the percentage increase between 6 and 7 is nearly 20%. Between 7 and 7, it's 0%. Between 7 and 3, it's minus 60%, and so on. I can do that by iterating over my series of values over here. I'm calling the range function by passing two arguments. Recall that when you pass two arguments, you're explicitly saying this is the start of the range and this is the exclusive end of the range. Why am I iterating from 1 through len of s minus 1? Because I want something to compare with the first value, correct? So I don't have anything to compare with if I start with 6. If I start with 7, I have 6 to compare that against. How am I doing the comparison? I'm simply saying s of I divided by s of I minus 1, which is the previous value, and then I'm subtracting 1. That will give me the difference, and I'm multiplying that by 100 to convert that into a percentage. For every occurrence of the number from index position 1, I'm iterating my for loop, computing the difference between the current number and the previous number as a percentage, and I'm appending the difference into a list called persons. I'm also converting the persons list into a series, and I'm plotting the line plot which represents the difference as increase or decrease in my plot over here. What we are going to do now is we are going to spend a few minutes looking at this code snippet over here and see if we are able to determine what bug this particular snippet of code has. Clearly, the highlighted red part of the code is the one that contains the bug. Go ahead and pause the lecture video here and see if you are able to determine what bug this particular code has. If you are able to find the bug, write a comment in the comment section stating what bug you found. So if you were thinking the bug is when we divide by s of I minus 1, you had the correct answer to my question. Why is that buggy? Clearly we are able to get a plot here. So this plot works for this particular random selection of numbers over here. What if choice function returns 0? Then you're going to have divide by 0 error, correct? Because s of I minus 1 will be 0 at some point. So this is an example of what is called as a non-deterministic bug. Non-deterministic bugs are bugs which are not always reproducible. Let me switch over to Jupyter Notebook. I have the same snippet of code here. As you can see, the current execution of the cell is not a buggy version because all the values of the series are non-zero. So if you run the cell enough number of times, you're going to run into the case where you have a divide by zero error. There we go. We have a divide by zero error because item in index 3 has a value of 0 over here. So what we are going to discuss next is the difference between deterministic and non-deterministic bugs. Deterministic bugs are really nice bugs because you can reproduce those every single time, and whenever you're able to reproduce a bug consistently, you can very easily fix that bug, correct? Non-deterministic bugs are scary bugs because it's very difficult for you to reproduce those. Let me give you two examples of non-deterministic bugs. We just went through one example where I used randomization to show you a non-deterministic bug. Another example would be system-related bugs. For example, you wrote a project which was supposed to deal with file processing and directory processing, right? Suppose you wrote a bunch of code on Windows platform. We take your code and run it on the Linux platform, and somehow your code fails. So that particular bug is non-deterministic with respect to the system on which you run the code. It's reproducible only on Linux, whereas it's not reproducible on Windows. I am going to give you a couple of pointers with respect to dealing with bugs in general. Whenever you have a really large data set, it's very difficult for you to narrow down your bug in order to come up with a fix for it. I would recommend you to always filter down to a smaller version of the data set so that you can very easily fix that bug. We have had a discussion in the past about different types of bugs. Semantic bug is the scariest of them all. It's definitely going to be non-deterministic. Syntax bugs are the floweriest of them all. That's because your code will crash immediately. And runtime bugs fall on the borderline. They are sometimes easy to debug, sometimes difficult to debug. Recall that you can easily convert semantic bug to a runtime bug by using assertion statement. What we are going to learn now is the concept of seeding, which is going to enable us to convert randomization based non-deterministic bugs to deterministic bugs. Seeding is a really fun topic. So far, we have been talking about random number generators. Those are all actually pseudo random, which means that they are not truly random. Seeding is the concept which enables us to understand the pseudo randomness of the random generators. Let's all assume that we are trying to board a train over here and you have multiple tracks. Each track is a seed. What you're going to get is when you call the choice function, you pick one of the train tracks and you're going to get values out of that. Let's say that I'm choosing the first track over here. If I ask for 3 values, I'm going to get the first 3 values, which are 684, 559 and 629. As you can see, this is not truly random, but we pick a particular train track and that particular train track is going to have infinite such numbers. You can choose a different train track. When you call the choice function one more time, that's going to choose another train track, which is another seed for you. So the question here is, how can we ensure that we are able to explicitly select one of the train tracks which represent one such seeds? You can use the numpy.random seed function to do that. So calling the numpy.random seed function is going to explicitly tell numpy random module to stick with a particular seed. So let's go through this particular example from the notebook. So I am picking 220 as my seed and I am calling my choice function to select 3 random values from 0 through 999. Notice that I'm getting the exact same values every time I run this code repetitively. That's because I'm fixing the seed and I'm asking for 3 random values. So every time I use the same seed, I'm going to get the exact same 3 random values. So hence the pseudo randomness over here. So you might be wondering, why exactly is seeding useful when it comes to converting a non-deterministic randomness based bug to a deterministic bug, let me give you an example approach for that. You can use the time module to compute the current time on your laptop by calling the time function. So I'm using the time function inside the time module. I can convert the return value to an integer, which is going to give me the number of seconds elapsed since 1970 up to the current time. Why 1970? 1970 is the beginning of time when it comes to computers. So all of your calculations are based on 1970. So now variable will contain the number of seconds elapsed since 1970's beginning up until the current second. So what numpy.random module does in order to be able to choose a seed is that it takes the current time. So we can explicitly capture the current time into a variable now, and you can reproduce the seed by just saying np.random.seed of now. So now you're going to be able to reproduce the random bug because you're able to catch hold of the seed. Let me demonstrate this snippet of code here. So notice that I'm printing the current time and also the seed, which is exactly the same. And I'm also displaying the choice functions output over here. So if I create a new cell below this and I set the same seed and call the choice function again for the exact same choices, I'm going to get the exact same values. So I'm now able to reproduce randomness because it is pseudo random. So seeds are super helpful to reproduce bugs which are caused due to non-deterministic nature of the randomness. Let's talk about statistical significance next. I'm going to show you a Dilbert comic for this particular topic. Dilbert is trying to tour a random number generator, and the random number generator gives 6 values as 999999 over and over again. So Dilbert is asking this question, are you sure that's random? For which the tour guide is saying, that's the problem with randomness, right? You can never be sure if that's truly random or not. So we are going to go through an example to demonstrate this. Let's consider coin flip as an example. Let's say that you're trying to have a simple game with your friend. You've called tails and your friend has called on heads. Let's say that you are flipping the coin 100 times and you get 49 tails and your friend gets 51 heads. Are you going to call shenanigans on your friend and say that your friend somehow cheated here? Probably not, correct? What if I tell you that your friend got 5 heads and you got 95 tails? You will probably say that your friend cheated just to make you win, correct? Nice friend though. Uh, let's consider a couple of more examples. What if I said your friend got 55 heads and you got 45 tails? Are you going to think that your friend cheated? Probably not. What if your friend gets 55 million heads and you get 45 million tails? You would probably think your friend cheated. So what sort of basis am I applying here? Couple of things, right? If my skew is really large for a really small sample, then I'm saying that my friend probably cheated. And if my skew is small but my sample is really large because we are dealing with million samples here, that is also a good evidence of cheating, correct? Since we have a programming class over here, we are actually going to write code for simulating this rather than take a coin and actually flip it. So we are going to follow these steps. We are going to flip the coin 100 times and we are going to repeat the experiment 10,000 times, and we are going to see what are the odds of getting 60-40 when it comes to heads and tails over here. So I'm going to switch over to my notebook. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to answer the next question, which is what are the odds that you're going to get 60-40 tails? Let me first define a couple of variables. I'm going to define number of trials. I am going to for now keep this as 10. Eventually we want to change the number of trials to 10,000, and I'm going to define a variable called flips, and I'm going to stick with 3 flips for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the choice function to choose between heads and tails. So I have two items H and T, and I want to be able to select a matrix of choices. Each row is going to represent a trial. So I'm going to define the size argument here. My first item is going to be trials to represent the rows, and the number of columns is going to be the number of flips. And I'm going to convert this into a data frame over here, and let me display the data frame for you. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take heads and change that to 0, and take tails and change that to 1, because that's going to make it very easy for us to be able to count the number of tails, or number of tails actually in this case, because we have 1, because we can sum up all the flips for a particular trial, which is going to be one single row over here, right? Let me first go ahead and display the data frame. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to sum up the number of tails for a given trial. Recall that you can call the sum function, but the sum function always computes the sum over a column. So you'll have to explicitly pass the argument for axis parameter as 1 to say that you want the sum to be done over rows instead of columns. And now we are going to get a series. It looks like we are getting somewhere between 1 and 3 tails for each of those 10 trials over here. So let's increase our experiment to 10,000 trials and 100 flips. I'm going to change the flips to 100, and I'm going to change the number of trials to 10,000 over here. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to first of all capture this data frame into DF, and let me show you the sum of all the tails over here. Looks like we are getting in and around a value of 40 or 50 here, right? Going back to our original question, we want to determine how many times we are getting a 60-40 split. So it's very easy for you to apply a Boolean condition to your series. So I'm simply going to first of all capture the return value of the count computation into a variable called counts here, and let me display counts. So I want to determine the situation where counts is greater than or equal to 60, correct? So I can do that by saying counts greater than or equal to 60, and that's going to give me a Boolean series. Let's also look at counts less than or equal to 40 for the other part of our determination here, and that's going to give us another Boolean series. What we are interested in is part of this count series which satisfy either of these conditions, correct? So recall that you can apply two conditions to a series by using the OR operator. You'll have to use parentheses to make sure that you're mentioning those two part of the conditions. So I'm going to say my first part of the condition is counts greater than or equal to 60, and the second is going to be counts greater than or equal to 40, and that will just give us the values in the counts series where we have either of those conditions, right? How can I determine how often this happens? I can just say I'll capture the return value here into a variable called extremes, and let me display extremes. And let's compute the probability of occurrence of extremes just by saying len of extremes, the number of times you get an extreme case where you have 40-60 split up between heads and tails, and then we want to divide that by total number of counts, right? Len of counts is simply nothing but the number of trials that you're doing, and what you're going to get is the percentage value. So I'm going to convert that into, sorry, what you're going to get is the probability value, and I'm going to convert that into a percentage. Looks like 5.7% of the times you might get 60-40 splitter. That's a pretty low count, right? This value that you're determining here is very close to what is called as p-value in statistics. It's not true p-value because you have very few counts of trials here, right? You only have 10,000 trials. Let's try and answer a couple of questions about the very first example that we went through in today's lecture, which was about 16 coin flips. So I'm going to answer these two questions about that. The first question is asking, with 16 coin flips, how often do you get 11 or more heads? So I'm going to change my trial to be a million value here. Yes, I have a million, and the number of flips are going to be 16, right? So what I want to be able to do is, I want to be able to apply the condition of counts greater than or equal to 11, and I want to compute the percentage of such occurrences, and I'm going to do that by dividing len of counts by trials. I'm just repeating the previous example but with a different condition, different flip count and trial count over here. Right, I need to be able to convert this into a percentage. Something is a little bit off here. Give me just a second. I'm going to try and first display counts. Okay, we do get the counts, and I don't want len of counts. I want len of extreme counts over here. Sorry. So let me capture this return value into a variable extremes, and I want len of extremes divided by number of trials, right? And I am using the wrong variable here. Let me also convert that into a percentage. Looks like 10% of the time is the percentage for getting 11 or more heads. Let's answer the final question here. This question is asking, how often do we see 7 heads in a row out of 16 coins? I am going to write a specific condition for that. The key part is 7 heads in a row. So I'll have to explicitly say I get 7 heads. So I'm going to use a for loop to write the solution for this particular part of the problem over here. I know that I'm a little bit exceeding the 50-minute lecture count, but I still want to wrap up this example because it's a really nice example. So I'm going to repeat the number of trials as 10,000 instead of million here. Instead of defining a flip count, I want to be able to explicitly say 7 heads in a row, correct? I can first of all define 7 heads in a row by defining a string of 7 H's. I can do that by multiplying H by 7. Let me display heads variable over here. That's going to give us 7 heads. What I'm going to do now is, I'm going to try out all the trials. I'm going to write a for loop for that, and I'm going to say for I in range of trials. What I want to be able to determine is, I am going to determine specifically 7 heads in a row, correct? So I'm going to first of all join the result of a choice function call into a string. So let me first call the choice function to choose between heads and tails over here, and I'm going to make it choose for me 16 coin tosses, and I'm going to join the result of my choice. Actually, let me just have 10 trials first to determine that my for loop over here is working. And once I confirm that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to 10,000 trials, and instead of printing, actually, sorry about that, let's stick with 10 trials for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to string all of these choices together. I can do that by using the join function call, right? Recall that you can mention what you're joining by. I just want to join all of them together, so I'm just going to call the join function with just empty join part over here, which is going to be the separator. Alright, looks like we are able to join all of the flip counts for the 16 coin flips. what we want to be able to determine is how often can we get 7 heads in a row, correct? So what we are going to do is we are going to use the find method call to find if there are 7 heads in a row. So I'm going to say if s dot actually let me capture this flips into a variable called coin flips, and I'm going to say if coin flips dot find of heads, which is 7 heads in a row, is not equal to -1. Recall that find function call can return -1 if you don't find it. If you find it, you're going to get an index position where you find it, correct? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to define a variable called 7 or more, and I'm going to initialize that to 0. So if I do find 7 flips, I'm just simply going to increment my variable over here, and what we are going to do is we are going to divide the number of times that occurs by the number of trials and multiply that by 100. I have an unmatched parenthesis. Let me go ahead and fix that. Alright, something is a little bit off over here. Okay, my trials is just 10. Clearly I can get 0% out of that. If I go through 10,000 trials, that can help me determine how many times I'm getting 7 heads in a row. Looks like you're only having that 4% of the time. That will be it for the final lecture. Please feel free to go through the rest of the slide deck.